Paddy, we've just seen Master McShee outside. He looks brilliant. How's he been since the last time we saw him racing?
Yeah, he's been in great form. He came home after Limerick and he ate up, and he's been in very good form, and we've been delighted with him.
And the Limerick race, like that was obviously a step up to a Grade 1 company. How hopeful were you going into that race?
Well, I suppose, Don, I don't know what you call it, arrogance or what, but we were quite confident going into it. And, you know, a lot of people had this opinion that we were just after a beginner's chase and we were only third. But Ian was so impressed with the way he jumped. The ground suited him, the distance suited him, and in fact the race suited him. So that's why we went straight to a Grade 1.
Yeah, and like obviously you thought he'd run well. Did you think that he could win it? Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest with you. My son-in-law John Vahey and myself went to the local pub Christmas Eve, and we stayed out the back because we didn't want to be close contact just in case. And anyone that passed in or out, I told them have a few bob in them. I was quite confident.
And they did?
And they did, yeah.
Good.
I believe they nearly lifted the roof off the pub when he won. So, yeah.
Great. And the way Ian rode him at Limerick, like there were 6 runners, he had him last for much of the race, and then just moved up as they got to the end of the backstraight. Was that the plan? Well,
the plan this year was to, because he bust a blood vessel in Leopardstown last year in a Grade 1, and we felt that he was under a lot of strain being up near the front, so we decided this year we'd up the distance and we'd run him off the pace. And that has worked a treat the last day. You know, we can't do much better than what we've done with that, you know.
Yeah. And what were you thinking throughout the race? Because then he moved up on the outside. I think it was the 4th last. He jumped really well and just got him in behind the pace setters, and then he travelled really well around the home turn.
Well, I suppose whatever I thought throughout the race, Don, I've watched it 1,000 times since. And when I had the commentator saying and to see him, Master McShee is coming there on the bridle.
Master McShee makes eye-catching progress on the outside in 4.
I probably didn't appreciate that on the day in Limerick as much as I've appreciated it since. And then, of course, the commentator thought we were bet. So, you know, it was nice to get that turned as well.
Farouk Dillon and Master McShee up the line. Farouk Dillon just from Master McShee. A gallant effort.
And did you think you were up?
Funny thing was, there was a man just came to me and he said, "You have it." I didn't, to be honest with you, because the angle of the camera was quite deceiving. So probably my gut feeling was that we weren't up.
Yeah. And where did you watch the race from?
I actually watched it in the big screen in Limerick. Right. So
in the parade ring?
Just outside the parade ring, yeah. Well, in actual fact, I was a little bit disappointed. Maybe I should have gone down to the line and watched it from that angle. I'd know then we were up.
Result of the 5th race, first number 6.
And then when you heard that he'd won it, how did that feel?
I suppose it was surreal, really, to see that, you know, to realise we had just won a Grade 1. To be actually running in a Grade 1 in itself was a brilliant feeling, and to actually win it, you know, and to beat, with no disrespect, to beat the calibre of horses we beat, the calibre of trainers we beat, and the calibre of owners we beat. And again, I'm not being disrespectful to any of the pre-mentioned, but it was lovely to win it on that occasion, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it, isn't it? It's like a Grade 1 race. It's the pinnacle of national hunt racing. They're the prizes you want to win.
Well, I suppose, you know, I often say this: if you only won a county final with hurling and football, you know, you'd be disappointed. You'd nearly be crying if you lost. And if you won it, you couldn't find the medal. And with this win, you get a big bonus as well. So it's all a big help, you know.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just witnessed a magnificent finish to the Boyle Sports Faheen Novice Chase. And our winner is number 6, Master McShee, trained by Paddy Corkery and ridden by Ian Power.
And like, did that sink home immediately, or did it take a little while that you just trained a Grade 1 winner?
It didn't sink in yet, Don.
Really, yeah.
No, look, I tell you, I have a tendency not to be too upbeat about it, and I'm looking forward to my next challenge, which is Leopardstown, if and when we might get there. And that's kind of my big hope, really, you know.
Yeah. And just go back to the start from Master McShee, like when did you get, or how did it come about that you got him? You got him from John and Morgan Sheehan?
Well, a friend of mine who I'm very friendly with, and we're in contact quite often, Donn McClean, rang me one day and he just said they had a horse there between himself and John. And he asked me would I be interested, and he said if you go and have a look at him, and I said if he's past John Sheehan there's no point in I looking at him. But he came with a good few problems now. Again, I've said this a good few times, that John Sheehan, you know, he's a super eye for a foal, and he's picked out, like War of Attrition, he's picked out some super horses, and Morgan himself still have a tendency to pick out grade 1 horses, and it's just the eye he has is brilliant. Yeah. And as well as that, the first man that rang me, and I didn't give a fortune for the horse, and the first man that rang me after he won his maiden hull was John Sheehan. And Tom actually came with me, so, you know.
Yeah. And so then he made his debut for you in a bumper in March 2020.
Yeah, again, I got him ready a good few times, and we ran into different problems and different issues, and at one stage I thought we'd never get him to run.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, and as well as that, you know, he had so many problems, and we tore our hair out trying to fix the problems and trying to get this right and that right. Then had him ready to go for a bumper in Navan and had a problem, ran into an issue. Then had him ready to go again, ran into another problem. Then ran him in Leopardstown, and just to add to the woe, we had to send off his passport. COVID kicked in and they lost his passport. So then the day against Appreciate, you know, we were taking on one of the best horses in the country, but at that stage we'd have taken on Arkle or whoever was there, because we were just hungry to get a run into him, you know.
Yeah, and like that was a massive run against Appreciate, wasn't it?
It was, and again now we were quite confident that we would have had a big run now, and we had a good few quid in him to be second that day, so, you know. And
there was never any sweat about him being second?
Pardon?
There was never any sweat about it being second. He was well clear.
Oh, he was well clear, yeah, he was well clear on the day. Himself and the priest ran away from, I don't know, was it 10 or 12 or 13 horses on the day, you know.
But so you weren't surprised at how close he got to Appreciate it?
No, not the way he was working weeks before it. He was working exceptionally well. And again, before Limerick, we went to Micheál Griffin's gallop, and I usually have a clock. I put him on the clock, and he was awesome. It is Jimmy Maloney rides him for his last couple of bits of work. And Jimmy got off him. He said, "You'll need no clock to find out how good that was." So Jimmy is very clever at that job, you know.
Yeah. And then he went back to Cork and beat Atlantic Ferry there. That's
right, yeah. And Atlantic Ferry came out and won a listed race after that. So, I mean, he's up in class. He's, you know.
So like he's got a good bank of solidity to his form. Like he's raced against and beaten some very good horses.
He has, but I suppose the biggest thing, Don, is, you know, he's with a very small trainer. You know, I'm 6 foot, but I'm very small in training wise. And, you know, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. They don't look at, you know, they say that clown in Waterford, he won't turn out another horse as good as this, and he won't have him right the next day. And, you know, maybe I won't, and I do my best, and I try to think it through, you know.
And then you went to Leopardstown for the Christmas festival last season and won a good handicap hurdle there. Yeah,
again, it was 2 miles, which is a great sign of the horse, to win at 2 and win at 2-4 in soft ground. And that day we kept him up the front. He was lacking experience. He had a lot of experienced horses behind him. He jumped exceptionally well. And, you know, he turned in Leopardstown on the bridle, and he finished exceptionally well.
And were you delighted that day? That was obviously a big win.
That was a huge win for us, yeah. To go to Leopardstown at the Christmas festival, it was a huge win for us.
Yeah, and then of course you brought him to the Dublin Racing Festival last year, and that was when he broke his blood vessel.
He burst the blood vessel, yeah. And when he turned in that day, he was in a nice position, and I suppose we really scratched our head as to what happened. So I went straight down, and the vet scoped him, and he was after busting a blood vessel. So.
And were you I'm sure you weren't surprised that there was something wrong. Were you kind of relieved that there was something amiss?
I suppose. I know you say relieved when you hear of a blood vessel being burst, because it's something that can reoccur, you know. And again, it's not nice for the horse as well to that happen, and you know. And then for the next 2 or 3 races, I pulled out the cotton wool, and I was training him, maybe trying to be gentle in him and stuff like that, and that just didn't work. So this year I had to go back to proper training again, and you know. And
was he always going chasing this year? Was that always the plan?
It was, yeah. Even though his mark over hulls is quite low, and he probably still has a few opportunities over hulls.
Was he 140, is he?
He is, but you know, there'd be conditional races there for horses that have maybe only 1-2 or something like that, and he's only won 2 races, so, you know.
Yeah, and like he's only had his two chases so far, do you think he has the potential to be a better chaser than Hurdler?
Oh, without a doubt, the way he jumps. The day, first day Ian got off of him, the day he won, the day he was second to a preset, he said he'll be some horse over fences. And one particular day, Ian couldn't make it to Fairy House, I think it was, and Sean Flanagan rode him. And Sean got off him, he said he'll be some horse over fences.
Right, yeah.
You know, so that's the potential that we're following at the moment, you know.
So on his chasing debut was in a very hot beginner's chase at Goran Park that Bob Ollinger won, and he finished third in that. You must have been delighted with that run, were you?
We were delighted with the run, and on the day we were kind of giving him an experience run. We weren't being hard on him because it was his first day back, kind of as such. And I suppose, look, Ashdale Bob fell at the third last, and he gifted us third place, and we were delighted with third.
And when did you decide to go for the Grade 1 race then after that?
Well, I suppose when you watch what some of the successful trainers do, and they often have a tendency to win a maiden hurdle and go to Grade 1s, and I just felt with his career and what he had done previous to that, that the Grade 1 in Limerick, the ground suited him, the distance suited him, and the way he jumped. Ian was, he said this horse, he just said above and go, and we nearly had to put a stone up in Ian's head to keep him down. He was so excited. And he said the way this horse jumps, you could go to entry with him. And you know, when I heard that, when I heard how well he jumped, and I think he proved that in Limerick again, he just pinged every fence. And, you know, but we've done quite a lot of jumping with him since now. We go to Kiley's Cross, and we go twice a week, and he pings down over them fences. Now, it won't make him jump any better, but his eye will be a little bit better, you know.
Yeah. And on the ground, because he goes so well on soft ground, but you think he can be as good as on better ground as well?
Just wouldn't be sure about tacky ground, but on soft ground, yeah, I think he's a good horse. And you know, but we just wouldn't be sure, because the day he ran in his bumper, when he went into tacky ground, you could see his action changed, and you know. Now again, he might have, with a bit of experience, he might be better next time, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And on Ian Power, like Ian Power gets on really well with him. He struck up a great relationship with him. How did that relationship between you and Ian develop? Well,
I suppose Ian and myself, Ian has ridden a good few horses for me, and you know, the first day he rode him, he was foot perfect on the horse, and I can't seem to get anyone better than Ian at the moment. You know, when he's won a Grade 1, you can't ask for much better than that. And,
yeah.
You know, he's just done the right thing every day he's ridden the horse, you know.
He seems to have a really good understanding of the horse.
He does, yeah, and no disrespect to, you know, I think he's an easy horse enough to ride now. I could ride him myself, but I'm just a bit old for the job now.
And does Ian come down here much to ride him out?
No, he jumps him at Kiley's Cross for me.
Right.
And other than that, I ride him a lot myself. I take him to the beach a lot. And when he comes to his 4 or 5 last bits of work, it's Jimmy Maloney sits in him.
Right. And on yourself, Paddy, like you're not training horses since you were a child or anything like that. You're relatively new to this game, aren't you?
I mean, at a wet week, Don, you could say. I think maybe a lot of people are, you know, they say this fella isn't in it that long. And you know, I had a very good mare called Mrs. McVeal, and now a friend of mine said one time, and I said this before, he said, you're so lucky, he said, if you fell out of wind, it is up you go, he said. So maybe he's right. And, you know, I started hunting with Dungarvan farmers, and I really enjoyed it. And that got my interest going in horses. I used to be very involved in the local GA club for years and years, and just got a horse and started riding him out. And I said, look, this enjoyment it's well, I was training local teams, and the one thing I found, you know, you'd come back there of a Sunday morning, you'd have training, and they'd have been in the pub the night before, whereas Master McShee is never in the pub on a Saturday night. He's always there Sunday morning when you look for him, you know.
Yeah. And how does he compare to Mrs. McPhail then, in terms of ability or in terms of how he trains?
Mrs. McVeal was a tyrant. I was a bit like our Lord. I fell 3 times off her one day. She was very tough. Hadn't an awful lot of ability, but toughness was her big thing. Whereas Master Mac, he's got cruising speed, he's got ability, and he's just a beautiful animal to have anything to do with.
Yeah, no, he looks like a horse who just wants to please you.
He's as pleasant as you could ever meet, you know.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I love about him. He's a real pleasant animal, you know.
So going to Leopardstown for the Dublin Racing Festival, all being well, what are you expecting and what are you hoping for?
What I'm expecting is one thing and what I'm hoping for might be another thing. So I'm hoping for a win. Now what I'm expecting is a good run. And you know, I've often said this, Don, and anyone in horses will know this, you're only one gallop away from success and one gallop away from disaster. And that's maybe the beauty or the disaster of horse racing, you know, and you have to take both on the chin, and hopefully that we'll bring the horse home safe. And that's it. Number one, I hope we'll get there, you know, because I'm like that program on television long ago, one man and his dog. Well, I'm one man and his horse now. I've only one choice, one chance, one stone bruise, and it's all over. We'll have to burn the program.